So the clutch is back on. I think I'm going to leave the starter off because it's real close on this side. So next I'm going to pull a transmission out. This guy wants me to go through that. Yeah, I was cleaning the grease off of where this front motor mount goes. And look, the frame's all cracked here. It's got one crack here and another one. I'm going to have to take this apart. This is right where the leaf spring goes through here. I'm going to have to weld all those up. Yeah, I'm not sure how far it goes underneath this piece, which it'll have to come off. Yeah, so I just took the pieces off that hold the leaf spring up in here. So now I'm going to weld all these cracks up. And this car is not very heavy, so you can support it like that. Yeah, and there's the pieces that I took off. So then to actually find the cracks, I'm going to use this kit that's made by Magnaflux. One of the cracks I can see real easy, but after it's cleaned off, I can't really see the other crack. So then there's a dye you put on there, then there's this other stuff you spray on, and it's supposed to show the cracks. Yeah, so here's what it looks like with the dye on there. Then we're going to leave it sitting on there for a while, and then there's this other stuff you use to clean it off, and then you spray the other, final stuff on, and then it shows the cracks. Yeah, so I think I got all the cracks welded up. And I'm going to grind this flat only where that clamp goes. And you can't actually weld this from the other side because the spring goes up in there and it'd be very difficult to grind that back flat. It'd be hard to do even if you had the frame out and upside down. Yeah, it was all cracked on the front too here. Yeah, and this is all I had to grind down to make this piece go back on here. Yeah, it's much stronger leaving it like that. And I'm going to spray some black paint on here, and then I'm going to put it back together. Yeah, so now I see why somebody put tape all over the leaf spring. The bolt that goes in the center of it's broken, so I'm going to have to take that out and put a new bolt through there. This is just sitting together right now. Yeah, and here's the leaf spring. And because this bolt in the center is broken, they went and put a bunch of electrical tape on it instead of fixing it. And this is normally a grade 8 fine thread bolt. And this one, the head can just be the normal way. Most cars, the head is round on the leaf spring bolts, on the newer cars. And all you have to do is just grind the corners off if it's like that. It will go through the round hole in the bracket. Yeah, and here's what the spring looks like with the bolt back in there. Yeah, it really rusted one side of it all up. I think with the tape on there, it held moisture in there. I went over it with a wire brush. Yeah, I'm not going to take this whole thing apart and sandblast and paint each one of these pieces. I've already got way too much time in this car. Yeah, I got the leaf spring back in there. So now I think I'm going to take the transmission out. The customer wants me to go through that. And then I'll start putting this whole thing back together. Yeah, so the easiest way to take this apart is to take the bell housing off the transmission. And here's the throwout bearing. Yeah, that way you don't have those two pedals sticking out of there when you go to pull the actual transmission. Yeah, the actual transmission is just tiny. I just got to take either the parking brake rod off and then the drive shaft, and that's it. Yeah, look at this belt that came off of it. It's a Dayton belt. The part number is VX-15, and the patent number's in 1925. This might be the original belt on it. They must have used some different numbering system back then. This is a 5/8 inch wide belt that's 42 inches long. Yes, I took and put that piece on here and these two gaskets and put two bolts through here temporary. Then I can put this on here, and I'll put a floor jack under the car where I can set the transmission on it and slide it back onto the shaft. Then these two pieces can go on after that. You just take these two bolts out and put those on. Yeah, I'm starting to get the transmission back in. It's also going to require a bunch of grease on that U-joint. So it's got a grease fitting on it. We're going to grease that too. Yeah, and I took and replaced that goofy style grease fitting it had with a regular one, and it's on the bottom, and you grease this until you see grease coming out of these two holes. Then you know this is full where the U-joint is. Then put the top piece on. Yeah, if you put it on first, you won't know when it's full of grease. Yeah, so the transmission's back in, and you can see that ball down there. The bell housing swivels on that. Yeah, and you see here there's a piece of felt in there. I think if any oil leaks out of the rear main seal, it leaks onto that, and that lubricates where it swivels on that ball. Yeah, I got the throwout bearing on there. Yeah, and pretty much I think I got everything back together in here. I still got to put oil in it. It takes 600 weight oil. Yeah, here's the oil it takes. Yeah, so everything with the transmission's back together. I'll go ahead and put the oil in it while this is apart. Yeah, the transmission doesn't even hold one bottle of this oil. I also checked the oil in the differential and it's full. You also, when you mount that piece on there with a ball, you got to remember to put those two bolts in the bell housing first or they won't go in there later. Yeah, so maybe tomorrow I'll put the engine back in here. Yeah, so now I'm ready to put the engine back in. The first thing you want to do is put a jack under the transmission. So if you need to raise or lower it, it's already there. And another thing on these cars, the motor mounts, it fits tight up against this piece, so it's not real easy to put the engine back in here. I guess Ford had the better idea when they designed these motor mounts. Yeah, another thing that's bad with these engines is with the flywheel and the bell housing and the clutch on there, it's real heavy in the rear of the engine, so it doesn't hang straight. And there's really nothing to strap this to get it to hang the way I want it to. Yeah, so the first thing I did here was move the jack stands all the way out to where I got enough room to roll this underneath. That should make it a little easier, but when I took it out, I pulled it out from the side. Yeah, and by putting one of these ratchet straps on it through where the starter mounts, I can get the engine to hang more straight. Yeah, and this is difficult to get it started over these motor mounts, so I stuck a screw jack in here and a 2x4, and once it starts, you can get it to go. You can take these motor mounts out of here, but it's kind of hard to get to the bolts, because it fits real tight up against it. Yeah, and once you get it started over those motor mounts and that harmonic balancer goes down there like that, then it won't try and go back forward on you. It'll stay where you want it. Yeah, so what I did to get this to line up is I put some longer bolts through here. It's not easy to get it to line up because you're fighting those motor mounts. And also here, the clearance between the frame and the harmonic balancer is not that much. Yeah, so the engine's all mounted back in here. Now I just got to start hooking stuff up. I've already hooked the choke and the throttle and the fuel line up. The exhaust I still got to do and put the air cleaner on it. Starter's still got to go in there. And I got to adjust the clutch. Yeah, so I got the starter in and these rods, one that retards the timing, and it's got a throttle too, and everything hooked back up. And they also had a battery disconnect switch there. I put it back. So now what needs to happen is the clutch needs to be adjusted. And how you do this should have 1 inch of free play. And almost all cars are going to be about the same. And that's like, it's probably got about 2 or 3 inches there. So I need to adjust that one rod. Yeah, I got the clutch adjusted, and the floorboards and the floor mat back in, and the battery's hooked back up. So So now I guess I got to put the radiator in it and the hood and everything on and rewire these headlights. Yeah, now I'm ready to start it. Yeah, I'm not sure which way this lever that retards the timing goes, but we'll find out as soon as we crank it over. See here. Yeah, I see why it's not running. The fuse blew. One of these wires for the headlights must have shorted out against something. The fuse goes right there on the starter. Yeah, I think I got it figured out. There's one wire shorted out. So now let's see if it starts. Yep, I must have this lever in the wrong Oh, I had the gas turned off here. Yeah, look at the distributor cap on this thing. Yeah, and this is the best way to clean points. And it's best if you always use a $100 bill on this. And it takes any dirt off of here. Let's see if I can hold this. And you can tell this is really dirty. Yeah, this is probably why it runs bad. Yeah, I'm just going to take these and stick them in the sandblast cabinet and clean them, and then I'll blow this out real good to make sure there's no sand in here. Yeah, probably nobody around here has these spark plugs. They're the ones that use a 7/8 socket. Yeah, and here's what the plugs look like after you sandblast them. Yeah, I got the headlights hooked up. About the only thing left to do to this is put the hood back on it. Yeah, I got the turn signals working and the windshield wipers. And I also figured out why it keeps blowing the main fuse. It's this switch is bad. When it's mounted in the actual bracket and you move it one direction, it blows the fuse. So I'll have to get that tomorrow and replace that. And all that does is turns this dome light on, or the light under by the gauges. Yeah, so I just got that switch for this, so now I can fix this. Yeah, it's been like 100 degrees outside. That's why I'm working on this so late. And it's still 90 degrees right now. Yeah, look at how cheap this little switch is. And what was happening is when you flip it one way, it ground out for some reason because there's something wrong inside through this metal here. And it would blow the fuse. Now, I'm going to have to do something different with this little thing that it was in because the new switch won't fit in that. Yeah, I just took this bracket and I flattened it out and made the hole bigger, and this will work now. Yeah, and here's what the switch does. One way it turns the dome light on. The other way it turns these lights on by the gauges, which there's not very many gauges in this. Yeah, the passenger compartment on these cars is so small. If I was 5 pounds bigger, I don't think I'd even fit in here. Yeah, I guess people back in those days were never overweight. Yeah, I got it all back together. That's about it for me in this car.